The Whitby High School originally opened as Ellesmere Grammar School on the 8th of September 1959. From the outset, the school was co-educational, with the girls' school building yet to be constructed. On the 22nd of May 1959, the local newspaper, the Ellesmere Pioneer, reported that Mr. Kenneth Hedges had been appointed as the head of the new school. A graduate of Cambridge and a former army major, Mr. Hedges came to Ellesmere Grammar School from Bedford Modern. The new building was constructed by local builders Thomas Warrington and Sons Limited at a cost of £210,000. Nevertheless, this was still a work in progress. Staircases were still under construction, there was no staff room, and the playground was yet to be laid. It would be another 2 years before the sports field were laid out and students had to bring in sandwiches, as there was no canteen. When it was completed, the building could accommodate 750 students. At the time of Mr. Hedges' appointment, the original deadline for the completion of the school was not to be until July 1960, but this was brought forward firstly to January that year, and then to September 1959, when it was decided to open with what classrooms had been constructed by that date. The school was formally opened by the Right Honourable Sir David Eccles, MP, Minister of Education, with the local mayor and other dignitaries in attendance. The mayor said, "We recognise that a school is more than bricks and mortar, more than blackboard and chalk. We recognise that education is not simply an affair of fitting our children for the business of earning a living, but of equipping them with a moral, spiritual and ethical armoury that will equip them to meet the challenges and opportunities and temptations of life." Shortly after the opening of the Overpool School building, work began on the upper school site, now known as the Sycamore Building, which opened as the Girls' Grammar School in 1963. Not everyone agreed with the separation, as the students were separated on the playground as well as in their studies, and even the staff only met on bus duty. With the permission of staff, the students sent a strongly worded petition against the division to County Hall, which fell on deaf ears. When the girls' school opened, Miss Sharples was the head of girls, with Mrs. Hughes as deputy, and Miss Neal as senior teacher, while Mr. Townsend was deputy head in the boys' school. From the outset, the school promoted a wide variety of extracurricular activities, which has continued to the present day. During the early 1960s, headmaster Mr. Hedges looked into the possibility of acquiring a property in North Wales to be used for outward bound activities. After considering 2 properties, a small Snowdonian cottage was rented. In 1984, this cottage was purchased outright by the Parent Teachers Association and has been used regularly throughout its association with the school. Staff and students have also continued to maintain and upgrade the cottage down to the present day. A school scout group was also founded in the 1960s. Run by Mr. Stan France, this was very popular and operated at the school until the 1980s. The annual camp at Bontachel was a fond memory for those who attended. During the reorganisation of 1974, Ellesmere Grammar School for boys and girls became the mixed Whitby Comprehensive School, opening in September of that year. Alien to us today, students remained fixed in their form bases, while it was the staff who moved from room to room. The arrangement was short-lived. Sadly, Mr. Hedges would not see the full transition due to his death from a sudden heart attack while attending a conference in Blackpool in March 1973. Deputy Mr. Townsend took over as acting head and saw through the opening of the new school until the appointment of Mr. Peter Emery. Mr. Emery made a notable change, still evident today, when he introduced the house pastoral system, based on the royal houses of Hanover, Stuart, Tudor, Windsor and York. Mr. Emery retired in 1982 and was replaced by Mr. Ron Fletcher, who came to the Whitby from Slough. He was a history graduate who had played rugby league for St Helens in the 1960s. Come the early 1990s, the Whitby High School saw more autonomy in controlling affairs of school, coupled with an increasing role played by the governors. This period also witnessed the battle to secure funding to erect new sports facilities. Bids to the National Lottery and the LEA were unsuccessful, but a scheme through private finance initiative enabled the construction of the new sports hall and drama studio on the former tennis courts in 2002. Further improvements in provision saw the library extended and completely refurbished, plus the craning in of the lunchbox in the upper school quadrangle, which is now utilised as a sixth form common room. The Whitby High School has pioneered the use of technology from the outset. An early Apple computer was installed for office use in the 1980s, while a network of Spectrum Sinclairs and BBCs were also installed for student use. And although in production since 1998, the school was still ahead of many schools in the UK when it launched its own website in early February 1999. The end of the school year in July 2002 saw the retirement of headmaster Mr. Fletcher, who had been at the Whitby since 1981. His successor was Mrs. Margaret Hughes, who took up her post in September 2002. Mrs. Hughes, an English graduate of Leeds, previously held a series of senior leadership roles in Wigan and St Helens, before moving on to a second headship at the Whitby High School. By 2005, the school had been awarded specialist school status in technology. This brought extra funding and focus on the educational use of technology through the school. In tandem with this, there was an increasing acceptance by staff in the use of technology and awareness of keeping up with technological developments and students' expertise. The predicted fall in numbers of students in Ellesmere Port since the millennium resulted in the merging of Cheshire Oaks, formerly Stanley High School, and Ellesmere Port School of Performing Arts, formerly Sutton High School, to form a combined academy. The Whitby High School became a foundation school and continues in its role as a high-performing establishment serving students in the locality. Following 9 successful years, Mrs. Hughes retired and was succeeded by her deputy of 7 years, Mr. Bryn Healy, in 2011. Mr. Healy, a graduate of the University of Nottingham, came to the school in 2004, following a number of leadership positions on the Wirral, including a county subject advisory role for design and technology. Throughout his time at the Whitby High School, he has worked to ensure the development of an education offer that is relevant to the needs of all students. A school that is forward-thinking while still embracing the traditions that has upheld the Whitby High School as the school of choice in Ellesmere Port.